Hey guys, Miss Willis here. Today we are starting our notes on the organ systems units, first starting with digestion. Oh, come on. So, our objectives for this section describe the process of digestion and absorption. So, how do we break down food? How does it actually get into the body? Trace a particle of food through the digestive system and describe the function of each organ along the way. We're going to be looking at the digestive tract, the gastrointestinal tract, the organs that food actually goes through. There's going to be some other ones involved as well. And knowing what they do to the food as it moves along the way. Evaluate the importance of surface area in the digestive process. So how much of the surface of the food is exposed, as well as how much surface area is there in each of the organs that we're moving the food through, if that plays an important role in digesting and absorbing the food. And then describe the role of enzymes in the digestive process. So there's going to be different ones along the way. And there's going to be a lot of them that we actually won't name. We'll just group together like pancreatic juices. There's enzymes in there. We won't name them all. Okay, so starting with the digestive system. Obviously, we all need energy and food to survive. So for us, the digestive system is going to be how we break that down into usable parts that we can absorb up into the bloodstream. Nutrients, we know this all the way back from the fall, that carbohydrates, lipids, and proteins are the nutrients that we eat in order to survive. If you also recall, carbohydrates are what our body digests first. They're the easiest for it to break down. Then it goes to lipids, second easiest to break down. When you have run out of these two things, then your body will break down proteins. So if you're cutting out a lot of this stuff and your body is now using proteins, and I'm talking about beyond your food, like if you were, say, like you're like, you know what, I'm just not going to eat for a while so that I can lose some weight. When your body gets to this point of breaking down the protein that's stored in your body, this is when it starts breaking down your muscles. So you'll be a little wimpy thing at the end if that's the way you decide to go. And then by breaking all these things down into small pieces, our body can then absorb them into the bloodstream. So there's two types of digestion. We have physical digestion or mechanical digestion, and then chemical digestion. Physical digestion is simply tearing it into smaller pieces, right? I haven't actually changed what the paper is. I took a piece of paper and just ripped it up. I didn't change what the paper is. I've just made it into smaller pieces. And as I've done this, I've exposed more and more of the edges of the, if this, take this into being food, and then more of our enzymes can act on it instead of if it was just the one giant piece having to work its way all the way across. So things that are going to help with this in our digestive system are going to be our teeth, right? Big part of mechanical digestion, ripping it up, tearing it up, and mashing it into a small amount with lots of breaks having high surface area on the edges of them. Versus chemical digestion using acid, enzyme, other fluids that these are all within to chemically break them down into the little tiny pieces of carbohydrates, lipids, and proteins. For our gastrointestinal tract, has a lot of stuff that helps it. We have that it produces enzymes. Remember, enzymes help speed up a chemical reaction, so it allows us to digest our food faster. A lot of times, if you didn't have enzymes, then the food would never move forward because we would die before the actual process could happen on its own. So enzymes help us speed up that reaction by lowering the amount of energy needed to make it happen. Acids can break things down fast as well. And then with that surface area, if there's more surface area on the food, then we have more space to attack it with chemicals and enzymes. And if there's more space, we have more absorption, then that's a good thing. So as we follow the food here, there we go. Food begins in the mouth with your teeth, and that's going to aid in physical digestion, PD here, physical digestion. You don't want to just swallow all your food whole, or it's going to take forever for it to start breaking down in your stomach, simply because we're not giving our body that advantage of physical digestion. Your salivary glands, right? Your mouth waters. That's saliva that's getting secreted. It has an enzyme called amylase, which is going to help with breaking down carbohydrates, and it's a type of chemical digestion. As we continue following the food, it goes to the esophagus. If you've ever swallowed something hot, like it's either you spit it out real quick or you swallow it down really fast, and it's about right here that you stop feeling the burn from swallowing it if you just go ahead and swallow it real fast. That is where peristalsis begins. You make that initial swallow, you can control that, and then it eventually just starts moving down on its own. Peristalsis is where we have the tube and it's going to squeeze it and push it along and squeeze it and push it along and squeeze it and push it along until the food gets down into the next area, which would be the stomach. Stomach is going to have enzymes. It's going to be in hydrochloric acid, and it's going to activate an enzyme called peptin. And then we'll have chemical digestion. We'll break down proteins in the stomach. When the food is done in the stomach, it's called chyme. It no longer looks like your food that it was when you swallowed it down. It's been broken into like a kind of grainy, I don't want to compare it to food because then that grosses people out. But I don't know, I mean, you've puked before. What it looks like then, it no longer looks like the food that you swallowed. It means that it was ready to go to the next organ, and so that's when it's called chyme. It gets to the small intestine, which is made of 3 parts. The first part being the duodenum, which is actually just a pretty short little curve. And that's where a lot of things like your liver and gallbladder and your pancreas are going to be adding stuff to the mixture. The next part is my favorite, the jejunum. Sounds like a DJ. Whoop, whoop, jejunum, right? And it's about 8 feet long, and then the ileum is the last part of the small intestine. It's about 13 feet long. And obviously, if you're a taller person, these will be longer numbers. If you're a shorter person, they'll be shorter numbers. And then I already explained that with the liver and pancreas. Oh no, where's my picture? There it is. Absorption of the nutrients is going to happen in the small intestine. Small intestine is going to have all of these bends in it, all of these little like finger-like projections called villi, singular, villus, and it increases the surface area of the inside of the small intestine. If you were actually to cut open the small intestine, like when we dissect the pig, if you were to cut that open, like fillet it open and run your hand across it, it'd be like touching velvet. And then like you move it the other way, you could actually see these villi. But within them are all these capillaries, and this is how, through diffusion, the food is going to get taken up into the bloodstream, which is why it's really important that they're in small enough pieces, all the way down into, your single molecules of carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids, so that they can actually get into the bloodstream at that point. When we've finished all of our absorption into the small intestine, then it's going to move on to the large intestine. And keep in mind that peristalsis has continued to happen here. In your small intestine, it keeps squeezing it along. There's 2 layers of muscles, one that wraps around this way and ones that are long across, and it helps squeeze it across. If you ever think of like those popsicles that come in a tube and you pinch and push and pinch and push and pinch and push until they get into your mouth, that's kind of how peristalsis works. So now we're in the large intestine or the colon. And this is where our body's going to absorb water. It actually kind of, you'll see all of these like bubbles or bulges within the colon. They're called haustra. And as it moves across, instead of just continuously moving across the colon, it actually kind of gets sloshed forward and then it rocks back and it sloshes forward and it rocks back and it sloshes forward and it rocks back until that water has been removed and you're just left with feces. So an interesting part here is that, you know, the water from this is then going to go and be filtered by your kidneys and stuff and become urine. And all this leftover stuff is feces. So that's where the phrase that poo is never part of you comes from. That simply, it was the stuff that your body said, nope, we don't need it. So that might be something to consider if you're pooping a lot. You might be eating a lot of things that your body just doesn't need, or at least not at the moment. And then at the very last of the colon, we get to the rectum and the anal sphincter. The rectum is where, so let me actually talk about these different parts of the large intestine. The first part, the ascending colon going up, ascend going up, transverse going across, descending going down, and then there's one back here that curves and then goes straight down behind all of the intestines. That's called the sigmoid colon for S shape. And then that leads to the rectum. Rectum is talking about going straight up and down. And so that'll be here. And then the anus being the part that leaves the body. The sigmoid colon is actually what gives shape to your poo. So if it comes out all curly or straight or whatever, it's because of that. And all of that has to do, there's an episode of How I Met Your Mother that like goes, that talks about that a lot. And I've always thought that was really funny because it's about your sigmoid colon. But anyway, there's also right here is the appendix. Okay, because when this all first dumps in here, this very large bulge that you see, that's called the cecum. And that's where it's called the blind spot because food from the small intestine actually dumps down into that. And then it's going to get pushed up into the ascending colon. But to know where the appendix is, it's right off of that very first part. So with the anus, getting to the food actually leaving the body, or feces at this point, leaving the body, there's two sphincters to this. There's the internal one. That's what tells you that you've got to go. And then there's the external one. And that's the one that when you're being potty trained, you learn how to control to be able to say whether you're going or if you're going to poo your pants. I'm running out of time. Sorry, I have to stay under 15 minutes. Other organs that play a role, remember the liver, the gallbladder, the pancreas, they're all playing a role in that very first part of the small intestine, the duodenum. So here's the stomach, and then all of this curve here is the duodenum, okay? Liver and gallbladder are going to secrete bile. The liver creates bile. Gallbladder stores excess bile. And then the pancreas is going to secrete enzymes that help make the chyme less acidic as it comes out of the stomach, moving to the rest of the body. And so just here are the objectives that you can review what we talked about for this section of notes, and I will see you next time.